everybody, Melon here. Welcome back to another episode of Teardown. Today we are going to be tearing down the G-Wolves Hati-R or the HTR 8K. Now this is a very tiny mouse that is actually surprisingly very serviceable. So this is probably going to be a pretty quick teardown, but I wanted to show you guys how to clean this unit because on the bottom it is hollow here. So it's going to be pretty easy for this unit to fill up with hair and that kind of stuff. So cleaning this unit is probably going to be something you have to do pretty frequently. So I wanted to make a guide to show you guys how to do that. Now before you get into the teardown, you will need a couple things. First, you will just need a regular cloth just to kind of hold your mouse into place as we do our teardown. You will also need a precision set of screwdrivers. Most of the screws inside the Hati-R are unsurprisingly quite small, so you will need some small precision bits for this teardown. So having a precision set is very helpful. And you will also need somebody to keep track of your screws, like an ice cube tray or pretty much whatever you want to use. But once you have all that, you're ready to go ahead and tear down your G-Wolves HTR 8K. So let's go ahead and get started. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove 3 base screws on the bottom of the unit. There's 2 at the top here and 1 on the bottom. Now once you have that open, getting the HTR open is actually quite easy. You can basically just put your finger underneath here and just gently pull from the back and you can crack the back shell open. If it doesn't crack, just run your finger along the sides of the mouse to release all the little clips here. Just like that. Now, the top shell is held in by the USB-C connector here. You can see how it's kind of stuck in like that. So what you have to do is you have to pull the back of the PCB out and just gently shimmy it out of its connector up at the top here. Just like that. Now, once you get it out, be very careful because there is a ribbon cable on the inside here. And if you just rip this off, you're going to rip the ribbon cable out. So be very careful with that. So in order to take that off, what I found to be the easiest was to hold the shell open like this and then just gently just take your fingers and just kind of pull up on the side of this connector just to release it. And then if it's off, you can go ahead and just pull off the connector just like that. A little finicky, but it does the trick. All right, now that you've done that, you've taken off the top and the bottom shell. Let's go ahead and talk about this top shell first. Now, there really isn't a lot to talk about here aside from this very unique side click PCB here. So in order to take this off, we have to go ahead and remove this very tiny anchoring screw right here. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then once that's done, in order to get the side clicks out, you basically have to pick up this PCB and pull it out at an angle because you can see at the front, it's kind of just in that little slot there. So you kind of have to jimmy the PCB up and then pull it out. I find it's easy to take a screwdriver and just go underneath and pull up, and you can release the board like that. And then you can shimmy it out of the board. Just be very gentle with this board because it is very small and very fragile. And here we have the Omron blue dots on their little daughter PCB here for the side buttons. We'll put those off to the side for now. The other thing you can remove here, of course, is the side buttons. So same procedure as always, just go ahead, take 2 fingers and press them into the side, and they come off extremely easily. Pretty much every single time I've taken this mouse apart, they fall out almost immediately. So don't worry too much about these ones, they come off very simply. Now, one really cool attention to detail you might notice here is that G-Wolves actually put these little foam blocks here to prevent any noise from the clicks rebounding against the side of the shell, which is a great attention to detail. All right, now next up we have the main clicks here. Now, normally I would say go ahead and remove the main clicks, but as you can see here, there are these little stabilizer pins at the bottom here that have actually been pre-lubed by G-Wolves, which is a great attention to detail. But in order to remove these, you have to basically pull these through the hole in the shell, and I don't really feel comfortable doing that because these are extremely fragile. So this is a mouse I'm going to say do not take off the main clicks unless you absolutely have to, because they are very fragile. These are the kind of clicks where it's very easy to get this in because it pops through the plastic, but taking it out is next to impossible without damaging the unit. So don't remove the main clicks on this unit, as you will most likely damage and break them irreparably, and that will damage the top shell as well. Just don't remove them. It's just going to be a bad experience all around. Well, that's pretty much everything for the top shell of the HTR. Let's go ahead and talk about the base next. Now, the base is obviously extremely small and very lightweight, and there's not really too much going on here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and disconnect the battery. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get our fingers on the side of this little connector here, and we're just going to gently wiggle up as best you can until it disconnects. Sometimes these can be very difficult to get out for some reason. There we go, just like that. Sorry, that was, I had to do it off camera. That one was really difficult to take off. And then next up, we can go ahead and remove the anchoring screws. So there's one here by the battery, another one by the battery, and then 2 up at the top. And then once those are all taken off, we can just take the PCB off. So grab by the scroll wheel clicks and just pull straight off, and the entire PCB comes off in one solid piece. Unfortunately, you can't remove the scroll wheel here either, as the stem is too long, so you can't actually take it out of the unit without breaking the encoder. So this is going to be another unit where you're going to have to leave the scroll wheel in, which is unfortunate because this is one thing that would be nice to repair the rubber wheel on around this, but it is what it is. Now, I guess technically speaking, we didn't have to remove the battery since it's all in one PCB, but just to be safe, it's better to do so. And then on the board itself, we can take a look at everything we have here. So here we have the 250 milliamp hour battery, we have the 3395 DMT6QU main sensor, the Nordic 52840 MCU, and then we have the TGC 12mm encoder, and we have our Wano blue shell pink dot main buttons here and here, and then we also have that Kale or Wano pillar switch for the scroll wheel click in the middle there. Overall, a very weight optimized board. As you can tell, there's been a lot of holes cut into it like there were on the Sora V2's board, but overall a very impressive tiny little board that packs a punch, as I talked about in my full review. All right, well, now that we've taken that out, that's pretty much everything for the teardown here. There's not really a lot to tear down. Let's go ahead and put the unit back together. All right, now first what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and reconnect the battery since it's on the same PCB. We can do this by taking this connector and just feeding it into the top of this tri-pin connector here, and then just pushing down the sides with your fingernails, and it should make contact like that. You can make sure this worked by flicking the board on the bottom and make sure that power LED goes on, and you are good to go. Next up, we can go ahead and put this back into the bottom board here. Now this is going to be very straightforward. There's not really a lot to do here. So how you can do this, you see this tiny little hole here, that will correspond to a standoff on the corner here. So what you do is you just want to gently line it up using the standoffs at the front as a guide. And with a little bit of fidgeting, you can get it on. You can see how the plastic piece makes contact there and anchors it in. Once that's in, you can go ahead and put back in your retention screws here, 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 and here. Now, just be very careful with this, because if you over tighten them, you can cause the base to warp a little bit, like I see how I'm putting pressure on it. So just be very careful with these. Make sure you tighten them evenly. You can test to make sure you did this right by putting the PCB on a counter with no skates on the bottom and just making sure it sits evenly. Make sure there's no kind of wobble to it. And if there's no wobble, you're good to go. If there is a little wobble, try untightening a couple of the screws and make sure it balances itself out. All right, now that's done, that's pretty much everything for the base. There really isn't too much to do here. Let's go ahead and work on the top shell next. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put in the side buttons back in. Now, how you do this is you basically just wanna take this and you just wanna slide it into this little hole up at the top there. See how there's this kind of brace for it there? Push it in all the way down and the buttons will pop out the bottom. Very, very simple to do so. All right, now next up, this part is probably the hardest part of this repair. You have to get this side button PCB back into this tiny little corner. Now, what you have to do is you have to take this tiny little piece and somehow slot it into that tiny little gap there while also putting the back of the PCB here. It's just extremely hard, especially for people with big hands like myself. So just if you take this out, just be careful putting it back in because it can be a little finicky. I'm just going to go ahead and try and put this back in, and I'll come back when I finally get it in. I managed to get it in for the bottom there, and I'm just going to see if I can squeeze it in and try my luck here. The problem with this is that sometimes the board is oriented incorrectly, but if you're lucky enough, you'll get it into this little slot and you can even the board out just like that. Just take your fingers and press it down to make sure it's made full contact. And then we can go ahead and put back in the side button PCB anchoring screw right here. And just like that, and then you have your side clicks back in, and then you can go ahead, double check to make sure it's still actuate, and you're good to go. Now, unfortunately, the side buttons troubles aren't over because now we have to go ahead and reconnect the top shell to the base, and we have to reconnect this very, very, very short ribbon cable into this tiny little connector here. How we have to do this is we're gonna have to go ahead and open this up. So you pull it to the up position. If it's closed, it's like that. If it's open, it's like that. And we have to thread the cable into the left side of this connector. Now, the easiest way to do this, I found, is to basically just take the top shell, kind of hover it over and gently line it up as best you can using the natural rigidity of the cable. Just kind of like that. And then once you kind of get it roughly in like that, you have to very gently flip the unit over like this. And see how we have a little more access to the cable. You want to reach in and just very, very gently on the top of your hand there, push this cable down. Now, generally speaking, I say don't do this under any circumstances because pushing on ribbon cables is very bad. But in this current situation, we don't really have a lot of options because the ribbon cable is next to impossible to get in. Now, the good thing about this is that if you do this right, you can see how we kind of have it open like this. The cable will, with enough pressure in the right angle, just naturally go in. It's a little tricky like that. So once it's in, you can see how it's kind of flush with the connector just like that. That's how you want it to be. It's a little finicky, but you want it like that. Once you get it to this position, put a finger on top, reach over with your other finger and close the connector. I know this is insane, but here we are. And you want to close the connector down just like that, and that should anchor in your side button cable. Again, very, very difficult to do this. I would love to see G-Wolves put a bigger cable in here, just like even like an extra inch on this cable would make this significantly easier to service this because it's very hard to get in, but it is what it is. Now, before you close the unit up, go ahead, flick your mouse on, go ahead and connect it to your computer and verify that your side buttons are working. If they're not working, this ribbon connector on the inside here is either uneven or it's not connected all the way. So if your side buttons don't work, just go ahead and reseed the cable as best you can. Again, just be very, very careful when doing so. Now, once we verify verified that the side buttons are still functional, if you're lucky they will be, you can go ahead and put in the top shell and the bottom shell back together. Now this is kind of tricky because you have to take the USB-C port here and stuff it through this connector here without damaging your cables, which can be a little finicky. So you just kind of want to angle it in, and if you get the angling right, you should be able to get it on there. It can take a bit of fidgeting sometimes to get it in, but once you get the right angle, it will slot in like that and the top will make contact. Once this is in, you can go ahead, press down everywhere else on the mouse, and the bottom clips will click in. If there's any loose spots, just be sure to press down on the sides to make sure there's no issues. And then once that's done, we can go ahead and put our anchoring screws back in. And once that's done, that is everything for disassembling and reassembling the G-Wolves Hati-R or HTR 8K. Overall, a surprisingly serviceable mouse. Honestly, the hardest part about this mouse is these side buttons, just because they're so tricky to get the PCB in. And then also the ribbon cable is painfully short. Again, I would like to see G-Wolves maybe add a little bit more length to that cable to make it a little easier to service, but this is a very, very minimal thing. Overall, for this being such a small and such a powerful mouse, I'm actually very impressed at how serviceable this unit is. So great job to G-Wolves here. They've done a fantastic job with the serviceability here on the Hati-R. But that's everything for today's teardown video. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support my efforts here making teardowns for all the mice I cover here on the channel, you can become a member here on YouTube. It is only $2 Canadian a month, and that is the best way to directly support the channel. You can also use code MELON with a 0 over at Mechkeys, Lethal Gaming Gear, Potent Gaming Gear, TJ Exclusives, and a couple other retailers to save yourself some money on your orders and directly support the channel. Thank you very much again to G-Wolves, who was kind enough to send over the Hati-R for review. I greatly appreciate it, and I will catch you all in the next episode of Teardown. Peace.